Hello and welcome to Bikini Design Club. Today I wanted to give you an option using the same pattern for the Bloom diaper cover, and I'm going to sew a 12 to 18 month old diaper cover, and I've made some changes, but I wanted to share so that you can do them at home if you want. So grabbing your front and back pieces from the pattern, if you put, these are different sizes, but never mind. You put your front and your back aligns. You have to match the seams, so you have to take out the seam. Okay, so you overlap them, and then you will have an entire piece just like I have underneath here. And then what I did was I made a line here because I want to do a ruffle on the front. On a diagonal here. So what I did was I cut it here, I added seam allowance, and my other panel I added seam allowance also, and so now I have two pattern pieces for the front to do my front. I'm gonna cut on the fold. We now have an entire piece here. We will not have the fasteners here with the plastic buttons, so we will not have that here, but it will be adjustable anyway. So let's go ahead and sew. I'm not gonna go on details on the sewing machine because I believe that you already saw the other video on the diaper cover or on Bloom, but I'm gonna share the results so that you can see the differences, and I'm gonna share whatever difference I'm going to make relative to the other one so that you know how to do this one, but the rest is the machine. I'm not going to get it on camera. Okay, so let's go ahead and cut our fabrics. Of course the cutting is different because we have different pattern pieces, but again, that's simple, and we are only gonna use one layer of fabric because the baby already has the diaper, so we don't need a lot of fabric, extra fabric. So using swimwear fabric, I'm just going to cut one layer of this piece using the fold line, 2 times this one, so like so, and symmetric, and I'll be back here. So today I'm going to be making my ruffles with this net. It has stretch, horizontal and vertical, and I feel like it's going to match very nicely with the yellow. So I've just cut it 2 straps to do the ruffles. I'm gonna go to my straight stitch machine, creating the line with the tail to pull, just like we did before on the other version of our diaper cover Bloom, and then we will be able to connect our rushes with our side fronts here and continue. So let's go to the straight stitch machine and apply the rushes here. So with these beautiful ruffles that I've just sewn, I use the yellow thread so you can perfectly see the result of the rush that I just did. I'm gonna go ahead and do a knot on one of the ends right away, and the amount of rush is more or less the size that I want. It's a bit bigger, so I can intensify this a little more, distribute this evenly through your fabric. This is very slippery in this fabric, so this is good for me. And now I'm going to do it on one side and show you on one side. So this is my front. I'm gonna grab my front, and I'm gonna grab my ruffles. I'm gonna place them aligned, the edge with the edge of the fabric, and I'm going to grab my front panel, okay, and right sides facing together. I'm gonna sandwich the ruffle in the middle of the fabric. I'm gonna pin very carefully, and I'm going to sew, applying 8mm seam allowance, a straight stitch all along this area here, and it will be done. And then I'll do the same for the other sides. And here it is already sewn together, and the seam, I leaned the seam towards the centerpiece, and I made a top stitch vertical with the straight stitch just to stabilize my seam. Now it's time to apply the waist bands all around and then the leg bands. To cut these fabric pieces, you may look the size on the pattern PDF file, but you can also do as I do. I always cut straps that are longer than I need, a little bit longer, just cut them straight, and then while I'm doing it, the adjustment from the band to the pattern, I just lay the strap on top of my actual pattern once it's sewed, and I adjust it and cut it and prepare my band. So it's up to you. Today I will be using the elastic. I will be using braided elastic this time, not a rubber elastic, and this is because when I go with my safety pin, usually the rubber elastic breaks, so I have to use braided elastic, otherwise I will not be able to do this. So now let's just place our band right sides facing together on our waist, and measure exactly, as I was telling you, the size that we need. So it's just a matter of folding and aligning and pinning and cutting, and you will have a band just with the size that you need. Align the sides seam with the seam of your band just to make it prettier and with a good finish, and align right sides facing together on your waist and both your leg holes. And sometimes I like to do just the waist and then one leg and then the other, and yeah, sometimes I do all of them, pinning and sewing all at once, but you decide how it's best for you. So place right sides facing together, pin on the edge of the fabric, and sew using more or less 6mm seam allowance. And once you have sewn the waists and both legs with this seam, it's time to trim the excess fabric that you will have. Trim on the legs and on the waist area before we do a fold, and we flatten the channel so that it will stay hidden inside the leg holes. With your straight stitch machine very near the edge, fold everything like I'm doing here, and sew with a straight stitch very near the edge, just like I'm showing you on my sewing machine. as you can see, the finish is pretty nice. And now it's time to close the channel so that we can then insert our elastic. When we are sewing and we get to the point where we are going to sew over the ruffle, instead of going over the ruffle, I stop, I move the ruffle, and then I start again. And this way the ruffle is loose, and I think it looks pretty nice. So on our first tutorial for the diaper cover with the ruffles on the back, we showed you two options on how to close the channel to insert the elastic. One of the ways, after you trim this excess fabric, of course, one of the ways is just by folding the fabric twice, like I'm doing here, and sewing on the edge, and it will be finished. The other way, I call it the lazy way, is just to lay it flat like so and sew it and then trim it. So it's up to you, and if you want, also check our other tutorial to see, because we have done the two different methods on the two leg holes, so you can perfectly see the results. So let's go ahead and choose a way, close the legs and also close the waistline. Don't forget to open a very small hole with your seam ripper on the seam of this channel, just so it's easier for you to insert the elastic once the channel is closed. Don't forget, before you sew and you close your channel, to trim the excess fabric so that this area will not result on a very bulky area, mainly because we are going to insert the elastic, so this would be very bulky if you don't trim the excess fabric. So on both legs today I did 2 folds and sewed, so I don't need to trim, and as you can see the result is pretty nice. And I have here the hole to insert now the elastic with the safety pin. And on the waist area I did the lazy method, so just by folding and sewing, and now I need to trim the excess fabric, as you can see, and also insert the elastic.
And once this is done, our pattern will be ready. I hope you really enjoyed this version of our bloom pattern, and hope to see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. Bye!